in the ancient village of Umuoka, where the moon spoke to the river, and the river answered with silence. There was a law older than memory, older than the oldest tree, older than the bones of kings buried beneath the earth. Every first daughter belonged to the river, not by choice, not by promise, but by blood. For generations, mothers gave birth knowing one truth: that their first cry would one day become the river's bride. And so the daughters were raised differently. Never allowed to wander too close to flowing water. Never permitted to fall in love too deeply. Never promised a future that did not belong to the spirits beneath the waves. And then, she was born. Amara. A child whose beauty made old women whisper, whose laughter made birds fall silent, whose eyes carried something no priest could explain. From the day she took her first breath, the river began to rise. The elders called it destiny. Her mother called it a curse. But Amara called it slavery. So when the time came, when the drums were beaten, when the white cloth of sacrifice was brought to her doorstep, she looked the elders in their eyes and said, "I belong to no river." And on that day, the wind stopped, the birds disappeared, and even the river went quiet. But spirits do not forget. So on the night of her human wedding, when laughter filled the compound, when palm wine flowed, when dancers stamped the earth beneath the moon, the river came for its bride. What happened next? No elder in Umuoka speaks of it. Before this story begins, I want to ask you something. If wealth, power, and a life beyond your wildest dreams were placed before you, but your groom was not human, would you say yes? Tell me in the comments. Yes or never. And if you love African stories filled with mystery, spirits, curses, and forgotten legends, subscribe now, because tonight's story may keep you awake. Long before maps gave names to kingdoms, before white men crossed the great waters, before the stories of men were written in books, there stood a village hidden between ancient forests and sacred earth. A village so blessed that its yam barns never emptied, so fertile that even in seasons of drought, its crops bowed heavy with abundance. A village where children never slept hungry, where goats multiplied, where palm wine flowed, and where gold seemed to hide beneath ordinary soil. The neighboring villages called it fortune, but Umuoka knew better. It was not fortune. It was a bargain. A covenant, written not with ink, but with blood. Beyond the village, past the farmlands, past the sacred Iroko trees, where no hunter dared whistle, there flowed a river older than memory. To strangers, it was only water. But to Umuoka, it was mother. It was protector. It was judge. And beneath its silent waters lived something that was never human. For over 300 harvests, the people of Umuoka worshipped the river. Every new moon, goats were slaughtered. Every planting season, kola nuts were broken. Every child born was blessed with Omeruma's water. And in return, the river gave them prosperity. No famine, no plague, no invasion, no war. The village prospered because the river always kept its side of the bargain. And so did the people. For every generation, every first daughter, belonged to Omirima. Not symbolically. Not in song. Not in prayer. But in flesh. When a woman gave birth to her first daughter, the midwives would wash the child, lift her toward the moon, and whisper, "She is not ours. She belongs to the river." And for generations, no one questioned it. No one resisted. No one dared. Until Amara, in the house of Chief Okafor, a child was born during a thunderstorm. The rain beat the roofs like war drums. The dogs howled. And the river rose. They named her Amara. And from the moment she opened her eyes, the old woman began to whisper, because no child had ever stared back at the world the way Amara did. She grew into beauty. The kind that made conversations stop. The kind that made young men forget their names. The kind that made old women pray. But beauty was the least dangerous thing about her. Amara was different. She asked questions. Questions children were never meant to ask. Why does the river need brides? Why does a spirit demand daughters? Why do gods need fear to be worshipped? And every question made the elders uncomfortable. While other girls learned songs, Amara learned words. While others carried firewood, she carried secrets, hidden beneath her sleeping mat. Wrapped in old cloth were books. Books brought by wandering teachers. Books her father never knew she kept. Books that taught her that the world was bigger than Umuoka. That rivers could be crossed. That destinies could be rewritten. While the other girls dreamed of marriage, Amara dreamed of cities, of knowledge, of freedom, of a life where her name did not belong to a spirit. But destiny has a way of finding those who run. And from childhood, Amara hated the river. Because every time she looked into its waters, something looked back. In every story cursed by spirits, there is always one mistake, one forbidden choice, one dangerous heartbeat that changes everything. And for Amara, his name was Umuoka. In the season of her choosing, when the village began preparing her for sacrifice, when old women measured white cloth, when sacred songs followed her like shadows, another stranger walked into Umuoka. He came from the northern forests, with nothing but a bow, a hunting knife, and eyes that feared nothing. Umuoka. No one knew exactly where he came from. Some said he had hunted lions. Some said he had crossed forbidden forests, where even spirits whispered. And some said death itself had once followed him and lost. Umuoka was not like the men of Umuoka. He did not bow to shrines. He did not lower his eyes before elders. He did not whisper when spirits were mentioned. He laughed when the villagers warned him, "Never hunt near Omirima." Omirima. He smiled and asked, "Does the river eat hunters too?" The elders called him arrogant. The women called him dangerous. The young men called him foolish. But Amara called him freedom. The first time they met, Amara was alone, walking the narrow path behind the village, a basket in her hands, and 1,000 thoughts in her mind. She never heard the animal, never saw the movement, never noticed the wild boar charging from the bushes, until an arrow, whoosh, split the air, thud, and the beast fell. She turned, and there he stood, bow in hand, breathing hard, eyes locked on hers, like he had been searching for them. And for the first time in her life, Amara forgot to look away. Umuoka smiled. Not the polite smile of village boys, not the fearful smile of men who knew her fate, but the smile of a man who had never learned to fear destiny. "You're welcome," he said. And Amara laughed. That night, for the first time since the choosing, she slept without dreaming of drowning. And so, the meetings began. At first, by accident, at the forest path, at the mango grove, at the edge of the farms. Then, by choice, under moonlight, beside ancient trees, far from watching eyes, they spoke about books, about cities, about places beyond rivers, beyond shrines, beyond fear. She told him, "My life was promised before I could speak." He looked at her and answered, "Then speak now." She told him, "The river owns me." He stepped closer and whispered, "Only if you let it." And somewhere between stolen smiles and whispered dreams, between trembling fingers and moonlit silences, they fell. Voice softens. They fell. Completely. Dangerously. Hopelessly. In love. Tell me something. If you believe true love can defeat destiny, type love in the comments. And don't look away, because Umuoka is about to change forever. Night after night, they met where the forest kissed the river, where spirits were said to listen, where lovers were never meant to stand. Amara forgot the drums. She forgot the white cloth. She forgot the songs of sacrifice. She even forgot to fear Omirima. But spirits never forget. On the seventh night, the moon hung full, silver, watching. Obine touched her face. Amara trembled. He moved closer, closer, and closer. And then, he kissed her. And in that exact moment, the ground shook. The birds exploded from the trees. The wind screamed. And behind them, the river rose. Not slowly, not naturally, but violently. Like something beneath the water had just awakened. And for the first time, even Umuoka looked afraid. In Umuoka, there were many things the people feared. They feared drought. They feared sickness. They feared the anger of kings. But above all, they feared the choosing. Because no one knew when it would happen. No messenger announced it. No drum warned of its coming. No elder could predict the day. Only the river knew. And on that morning, the birds stopped singing. The goats refused to eat. The dogs hid beneath wooden huts. And even the wind seemed afraid to move. The elders looked toward the forest, and their faces changed. Because through the trees, someone was coming. Slowly. Step by step. A figure dressed in white clay, wrapped in red beads, with curries that whispered against each other. Eyes as old as forgotten graves. She had not visited Umuoka in 18 harvests. Voice drops to a whisper. And when the children saw her, they ran. She was called Momenkem, the keeper of sacred names, the mouth of spirits, the woman who spoke. And gods answered. Some said she was over 100 years old. Others swore she had never been young. As Momenkem entered the village square, no one greeted her. No one spoke. No one breathed. The only sound was her staff. Talk. Against the earth. Talk. Against the earth. Talk. She stopped at the center of the square, closed her eyes, and lifted both hands toward the sky. When she spoke, her voice did not sound human. The river has spoken. The spirit has chosen. And in that moment, the silence broke. Women screamed with joy. Men beat their chests. Drums exploded into the air. Children danced in circles. Because to Umuoka, to be chosen was not death. It was honor. It was glory. It was proof that the river still loved them. But not everyone celebrated. In the crowd, Amara's mother, Nkosi, said nothing. She did not clap. She did not sing. She did not dance. She only stood there, with tears gathering in silent eyes. Beside her, Chief Okafor, the strongest man in Umuoka, the man whose voice once made warriors kneel, was trembling, and before anyone knew the chosen name, he bowed, not to the priestess, but to fear. Far from the square, Amara sat beneath an iroko tree, a book hidden beneath her wrapper, her lips silently reading words the village believed women should never know. She heard the drums, and her heart stopped, because somewhere deep inside, she already knew. Then, from across the square, a voice called her name. Amara. The crowd parted. Eyes followed her. Feet moved away from her, as though she had already become something sacred or cursed. She walked slowly, one step, then another, toward Momenkem. Pause. And as she stood before the priestess, she searched her mother's face for a lie. She searched her father's face for courage. Voice softens. She found neither. Momenkem opened her eyes and smiled. A smile that carried no warmth. Child, the river has waited long enough. And in that moment, Amara understood. She was the chosen bride. The crowd erupted. Drums, songs, dancing, praise. But to Amara, every sound became water. Muffled, distant, drowning. Momenkem lifted her ancient hand and placed it on Amara's forehead. And the moment skin touched skin, Amara saw it. Sharp inhale. Dark water. A moon stained red. Hands pulling her downward. Voices singing wedding songs. From beneath the river, voice becomes almost a whisper. And suddenly, Amara remembered a dream she had forgotten. A dream of drowning in wedding clothes. Some men command attention. Some men command fear. But there are beings whose very presence makes the soul remember. It was never meant to stand before gods. And as Amara stood at the edge of Umuoka, barefoot, trembling, Unable to look away, she realized something terrifying. This was no spirit. This was a king. He stood upon the black water, as though the river itself was kneeling beneath him. Moonlight wrapped around his skin. Silver mist danced at his feet. And his eyes looked like they had watched the first sunrise. Amara wanted to run. She wanted to scream. She wanted to call for Ibuka. Voice lowers. But her body refused to obey. Mary smiled. Not cruelly, not kindly, but like someone finally meeting what had always belonged to him. Then he spoke. And when he spoke, the river answered. Soft ripples. Do you know why your village prospers? Do you know why Umuoka has never known famine? Why sickness passes over your children? Why your enemies disappear before reaching your borders? Amara said nothing. Because suddenly, she wasn't sure. She wanted the answers. Mary stepped closer. But his feet never sank. Because of me. The wind stopped. The trees went silent. Even the insects ceased their song. Mary raised one hand. And the river began to glow. Inside the water, Amara saw memories. Not dreams. Not visions. Voice softens. The truth. She saw her mother, holding her as a baby, weeping beside this very river. She saw her father, kneeling in fear, offering goats, palm wine, blood. She saw her family, poor, hungry, broken. And then she saw the water rise, and everything change. New farmland, healthy livestock, overflowing yam barns, gold, power, respect. Amara's knees weakened. Because for the first time, she understood. Mary had not been waiting for her. For months. Or years. Voice drops. He had been watching. Since birth. He leaned closer. And whispered. The night you were born. I touched your cradle. When fever came for you at 3 harvests. I drove death away. When raiders crossed your borders. I drowned them before dawn. When your father begged for wealth. I answered. Everything your family has. Everything your village is. Comes from me. Amara's heart pounded. Because deep inside. She knew. He wasn't lying. Mary's eyes softened. For the first time. Almost human. I watched your first steps. Your first tears. Your first questions. Your first rebellion. He smiled. A dangerous smile. And your first kiss. The water around him began to rise. Not violently. Not angrily. Possessively. Tell me, if power, wealth, and immortality stood before you, what would you choose? Keep watching. Because Amara's answer could destroy everything. Mary stretched out his hand. The river glowed brighter. The moon disappeared behind clouds. And his voice shook the earth. Marry me, and your bloodline will rule forever. Amara's breath caught. Kings would kneel. Empires would rise. Her children would never know hunger. Her name would outlive history. Then, Mary's smile vanished. The water turned black. The air turned cold. And his eyes became ancient again. Or refuse me, And the river takes everything. In that instant, the waters behind him rose like walls. And inside the water, Amara saw her mother screaming, her father drowning, Umuoka bleeding, Umuoka burning, whisper. And suddenly, choosing love no longer felt simple. After that night, after standing before a god, after hearing a promise and a threat, Amara knew one thing. If she stayed, she would never belong to herself again. So before dawn, she ran, not to the shrine, not to her mother, not to the elders, voice softens, but to the only man who had ever made her forget. She was cursed. Umuoka. Umuoka listened as Amara told him everything. The voice, the spirit, the bargain, the threat, the blood. And for the first time, even Umuoka said nothing. He stared into the fire for a long, terrible. Then he looked up and smiled. Not because he wasn't afraid, but because fear had never stopped him before. Then we leave tonight. Amara's breath caught. Leave. He nodded. Beyond the forest, beyond the river, beyond every spirit your people bow to. He took her trembling hands and whispered, "If destiny wants you, then destiny will have to chase us." Amara cried. Not from fear, not from pain. Voice softens. But because for the first time, freedom felt real. That night, under a moon hidden behind storm clouds, a secret was born. Umuoka was not alone. Some of the village youths, those who secretly hated the old ways, those who had buried sisters, those who had watched daughters disappear, came forward. They gathered in silence, torches covered, voices lowered, hearts pounding. There were 6 of them. Hunters, farmers, brothers, friends, and every one of them was willing to betray tradition. One carried food, one carried weapons, one knew hidden paths through forests older than memory. And Umuoka, he carried hope. At midnight, Amara stepped out of her father's compound, barefoot, wrapped in dark cloth. No beads, no bridal markings, no chains. She did not look back, because some cages become stronger the moment you hesitate. Umuoka took her hand, and together they disappeared into the forest. Behind them, the youths followed, silent, focused, determined. For one glorious moment, it almost worked. They crossed the old shrine. They passed the hunter's path. They even reached the boundary stones. The place where no daughter of Umuoka had ever crossed. Amara smiled. Umuoka squeezed her hand. Freedom was only a few steps away. Then, a voice. Stop. The forest froze. The wind died. The torches trembled. Slowly, Amara turned, and her blood turned cold. Standing behind them, with a torch in one hand and betrayal in the other, was her father. Chief Is. The man who taught her to walk. The man who once carried her on his shoulders. The man who should have protected her. Had sold her. Amara's voice shook. Father. Chief Ease did not answer. He only stared. With eyes already dead. Then, slowly, he raised his hand. And pointed. To the river. Forgive me. I made my choice decades ago. The youth stepped back. Umuoka reached for his knife. Amara stopped breathing. Then Chief Ease spoke again. And every word felt like poison. Before you were born. Before your mother knew your name. I was poor. Hungry. Powerless. His voice broke. So I made a bargain. I sold my soul. To the river. The earth shook. The trees bent. The river began to roar. And before anyone could run. Before anyone could fight. Before Amara could scream. The water exploded. A hand. Not human. Not flesh. Made of water. And rage. It shot from the darkness. And wrapped around Umuoka. His eyes widened. His fingers tightened around Amara's hand. Then slipped. Amara. Whisper. And before Amara could scream, the river swallowed Umuoka. Umuoka was gone. Swallowed. Not by waves. But by something. Alive. Amara stood frozen. Her hand still stretched into empty air. Her fingers still remembering his touch. Behind her, the youths ran. The torches fell. Chief Ease collapsed to his knees. And the forest held its breath. Then Amara screamed. Not from fear. Not from pain. But from love. And before anyone could stop her. Before anyone could speak. Before even the spirits could understand. She jumped. Into a marina. The water closed above her head. Cold. Heavy. Endless. She sank. Deeper. And deeper. And deeper. She fought. She kicked. She reached. She screamed Umuoka's name. But underwater, even love makes no sound. Her lungs burned. Her vision blurred. The darkness swallowed everything. And then, light, golden, warm, impossible. Amara opened her eyes and realized she was breathing. Not drowning. Not dead. Whisper. Alive. And when she stood, she found herself inside a kingdom. Hidden beneath the river. The kingdom below. Palaces of gold. Columns made of crystal. Walls glowing with ancient symbols. Fish made of silver. Gardens that bloomed without sunlight. Above her, there was water. Yet she did not drown. Below her, there was earth. Yet she had not died. Amara had crossed into the world. Between life and legend. She whispered, Umuoka. Her voice echoed through the golden halls. But instead of an answer, she heard footsteps. Slow. Calm. Familiar. And from the glowing mist, he emerged. Merry. But this time, he did not look like a monster. He did not look like a god. He looked lonely. Amara's anger exploded. Where is Umuoka? The palace trembled. The water around them shook. But Merry only looked at her. And for the first time, she saw pain in immortal eyes. Then he spoke. Softly. He lives. Amara froze. Then why bring me here? Mary turned away. And for the first time, the spirit looked ashamed. Then he said, because you deserve the truth. He lifted one hand, and the golden walls began to move. Inside them, Amara saw another life. Not hers. Pause. His. Once. Long before Umuoka. Long before shrines. Long before sacrifices. Mary was human. A prince. A warrior. A man. A man loved by his people. A man blessed with wealth, power, land, gold. But gold was never enough. He wanted more. More kingdoms. More power. More worship. More immortality. And in his greed, he betrayed everyone who loved him. His brothers. His people. Even the woman who loved him. And for that, the ancestors cursed him. His body dissolved. His kingdom sank. His soul bound forever to water. Amara whispered, so you're cursed. Mary looked at her. And for the first time, the spirit looked human again. He nodded. Not cursed by magic. Cursed by greed. Amara's heart pounded. Because suddenly, he wasn't her enemy. He was a prisoner. Then Mary stepped closer and whispered words that changed everything. There is only one thing that can break what I became. Amara's breath caught. What? Mary looked directly into her soul and answered. Whisper. True love. In that golden kingdom, beneath a river, beneath a village, beneath the weight of generations, Amara finally understood that destiny was never about choosing love. It was about choosing what love was worth. She stood in silence, tears gathering, heart breaking, because for the first time, she could see every road to her left, a vision, Umuoka, alive, breathing, trapped inside crystal water, his hands pounding, his voice muffled, his eyes searching for her. To her right, another vision, Umuoka, the village, her mother, her father, children, elders, every hut, every farm, every life, standing at the edge of destruction. The waters above them churned. The kingdom trembled. And Mary, stood silently, not as a god, not as a monster, but as a man, waiting to be judged. Then his voice echoed through the kingdom. There are only two paths, Amara. He raised one hand, and the first vision glowed brighter. Choose him. He pointed to Umuoka. I release the hunter. I open the river. You leave this place, together. Amara's breath caught. She saw it. A life beyond Umuoka. Through forests. Through cities. Through freedom. Through children. Through laughter. Through love. Then Mary's voice darkened. But when you leave, your village dies. The vision changed. Flood. Fire. Screaming. Children swallowed by water. Mothers crying. Fields destroyed. Shrines collapsing. Amara covered her mouth. Tears falling. Then Mary raised his other hand. And the second vision appeared. Choice 2. Voice deeper, ancient. Choose me. The kingdom glowed gold. Become my bride. Break my curse. And Umuoka lives. Amara saw it. Children laughing. Harvests rising. Peace. Generations. Songs. Her people. Saved. But then. She saw herself. Alone. Immortal. Far beneath the river. Forever. Amara fell to her knees. And cried. Not softly. Not gracefully. But like someone. Whose soul. Was being torn in two. She looked at Mary. Her voice trembling. Why me? Mary's eyes softened. And for the first time. The spirit looked afraid. Because you are the first. Who made me remember. He stepped closer. What being human felt like. Amara's tears fell harder. She looked toward Umuoka. Then toward Umuoka. Then toward Mary. And whispered. Why must love always demand sacrifice? And suddenly. The kingdom shook. Not with water. Not with power. With voices. Ancient voices. Older than rivers. Older than kings. Older than fear. From the golden mist. They came. The ancestors. Men. Women. Warriors. Queens. Priests. Mothers. Kings. Generations of blood. Generations of sacrifice. Generations of secrets. Their eyes glowed like stars. And as they surrounded Amara, the oldest among them stepped forward. An ancient queen. Crowned in light. Silent. Until she spoke. Child of river. Child of rebellion. Child of love. Her voice shook heaven. The choice. Whisper. Has always been yours. In that moment. Surrounded by kings long dead. By mothers whose names had become dust. By warriors. By queens. By spirits. Amara finally understood. The river. Was never her prison. Fear was. She rose. Slowly. Silently. Tears still warm upon her face. But her eyes. Were no longer afraid. She looked at Umuoka. Still trapped. Still fighting. Still believing. She looked at Mary. The spirit. The king. The prisoner. And then. She looked at the ancestors. The ancestors. The ancestors. Her voice trembled. Not from weakness. But from truth. All my life. Men, spirits, elders. Everyone chose for me. Her tears fell. But this time. She did not wipe them away. The river chose me. She looked at Mary. The village chose me. She looked toward Umuoka. Even love. She looked at Umuoka. Tried to choose for me. Then. Amara smiled. A small smile. But powerful enough. To make the ancestors bow their heads. And then she said words. No daughter of Umuoka. Had ever spoken. This time. I choose myself. The kingdom shook. Not violently. Not angrily. But like reality itself. Had forgotten. This was possible. Mary's eyes widened. For the first time in centuries. The spirit looked afraid. Amara, no. But she was already walking. Past Ibuka. Past Mary. Past the ancestors. Toward something. Hidden behind the golden throne. A fire. Not red. Not orange. Not human. White. Ancient. Sacred. The fire of beginning. The fire that existed before rivers, before kings, before curses, before destiny. The fire that creates and destroys. Ibuka screamed. Amara. Mary reached for her. If you enter that fire. But Amara never turned. She only whispered. Voice soft, almost smiling. Then let every chain burn. And with that, she stepped into the sacred fire. Silence. For one heartbeat. Nothing happened. Then, the world exploded. The golden kingdom cracked. The palace shattered. The water screamed. Mary fell to his knees. The ancestors vanished into light. And above, inside Omerima, voice rises. The river exploded. Thunder, lightning, wind, rain. Trees uprooted. Shrines shattered. Mountains echoed. And all of Umuoka fell to its knees. Then, just as suddenly as it began, everything went silent. After the fire, there was no more war between Umuoka and the river. Umuoka, Omerima. The storms did not return. The sacrifices did not continue. And the name of the river was no longer spoken with fear. Years later, children were born without chains on their destiny. They played near the water without trembling. And in the evenings, when elders gathered under the Iroko trees, they told a new story. Not of fear, not of sacrifice, but of a woman, a girl, who was chosen by a spirit, loved by a man, and feared by a village. But most importantly, a girl who chose herself. And they called her name Amara. Amara. Some said she died in the sacred fire. Some said she became the river. Some said she walked into the ancestors and never returned. But the children believed something else. Because every year, on the night of the great storm, when the sky remembers and the river grows quiet, they see it at the edge of Omerima. Omerima. Golden footprints. Not human. Not spirit. Not God. Just proof that something once walked there and changed everything. Some traditions protect a people, and some traditions wait for someone brave enough to break them. Now tell me, if Amara made the right choice. Type brave in the comments. And if you believe some traditions deserve to be broken, and some stories were never meant to end in silence. Subscribe now. Because the river never forgets its next bride.